Have you ever stopped to wonder why the things that once defined your life, like the laughter of a crowded room or the buzz of a packed social calendar, start to feel less vital as the years roll by? Picture this. A man sits alone on his porch at dusk, the sky streaked with hues of orange and purple, a cup of tea warming his hands. He's not lonely, he's content. This isn't the image we're taught to chase, yet for many, it becomes the truest portrait of peace after 70. As we age, the priorities that once tethered us to the world shift in quiet, profound ways. The need to maintain a sprawling circle of friends, once as essential as breathing, begins to fade. And here's a truth that might catch you off guard. You don't actually need friends after 70. At first, that might sound jarring, even isolating, but lean in closer, and you'll see it's not about shutting the world out. It's about opening the door to a life shaped by independence, self-discovery, and unshakable well-being. In this journey, we're going to unravel 6 compelling reasons why friendships, long held as the cornerstone of a full life, may not be as necessary in your later years as you once believed. This isn't a tale of loneliness or retreat. It's a celebration of living on your own terms, free from the weight of social expectations that no longer fit. We'll explore how this shift can sharpen your mindset, deepen your personal freedom, and even bolster your health, transforming the twilight of life into something richer than you ever imagined. Stay with me until the end, because what you discover might not just liberate you, it could redefine how you see yourself and your later years for the better. Let's dive in. Number 1. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. Imagine a younger version of yourself, rushing through life, your worth tangled up in the nods of approval from friends, colleagues, or even strangers at a party. Back then, friendships often doubled as a stage, a place to perform, to fit in, to prove you belonged. The pressure was relentless. Impress the co-worker with a witty remark, keep up with the latest gossip to stay relevant, or host that dinner just to feel included. But now, at 70 or beyond, that stage has crumbled and the spotlight has dimmed. You've already lived through the decades where social validation felt like currency. You've built a life, a legacy of experiences, triumphs, and lessons, and the opinions of others no longer carry the weight they once did. This is the freedom of your later years, the realization that true fulfillment doesn't bloom from applause or acceptance. It grows from within. You don't need a crowd to confirm your worth. You've earned the right to stand tall in your own skin. Take Harold, a wiry man in his early 70s with silver hair and a sharp gaze, who spent decades scaling the corporate ladder. His life was a revolving door of colleagues, acquaintances, and so-called friends. Relationships forged in boardrooms and maintained over cocktails. But when he retired, the phone stopped ringing. At first, he felt a pang of loss, dialing old numbers, hoping to rekindle ties. Then one crisp autumn day, as he sat by his window, watching leaves drift lazily to the ground, it hit him. Why was he chasing shadows? Those friendships had been convenient, not deep. They'd existed because of shared spaces, not shared souls. So Harold let go. He traded forced small talk for the hum of his own thoughts. He rediscovered passions he'd shelved, woodworking in his garage, the scent of sawdust filling the air, or reading novels that transported him to distant worlds. For the first time in years, he wasn't performing for anyone. No more pretending to laugh at stale jokes. No more nodding through tedious stories. He was free to live for himself. And in that freedom, he found a lightness he hadn't known he'd lost. The lesson? When you stop seeking validation from others, you reclaim the energy once spent on friendships that added little to your life. You don't need to prove anything anymore. The only approval that matters is your own. Number 2, peace becomes more valuable than socializing. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the sound of silence. Not the eerie kind, but the gentle hush of a morning unbroken by chatter or demands. As you age, that stillness starts to feel like a rare treasure, far more precious than the clamor of a crowded room. In your younger years, socializing was the heartbeat of life. Late-night conversations, bustling gatherings, the electric hum of connection. It felt essential, like a badge of a life well lived. But as the years stack up, something shifts. Peace, deep, uninterrupted peace, rises above the noise, calling you to a quieter shore. Friendships, even the warmest ones, carry a thread of responsibility. There are calls to return, invitations to juggle, unspoken rules to keep the bond alive. It's not that these ties are burdens, it's that over time, they can start to feel like weights you didn't sign up to carry. At 70, your time is yours to guard, and you begin to crave the calm that comes with fewer obligations. Consider Margaret, a sprightly 74-year-old with a quick smile and a love for gardening. Her life once overflowed with friends, weekly lunches, group calls that stretched into hours, holiday parties that spilled into the night. Her calendar was a tapestry of connection, woven with the threads of others' lives. But as the years wore on, she noticed a creeping exhaustion. The chatter felt repetitive, the complaints predictable. Some friends called only to vent, others to stir the pot with gossip she no longer cared for. What had once been joy morphed into duty. One spring morning, as she pruned her roses under a soft sun, Margaret made a choice. She stopped saying yes out of guilt. She declined invitations that didn't spark excitement, let texts sit unanswered without apology. In their place, she embraced the quiet. She wandered through parks, the rustle of leaves her only companion. She lost herself in books, their pages whispering stories she'd longed to explore. The solitude wasn't empty, it was rich, alive with a peace she hadn't known she'd been missing. This is the gift of your later years, the freedom to choose calm over chaos, to savor your own company without needing a crowd to fill the silence. If you've ever felt a twinge of guilt for stepping back from the social whirl, let it go. You're not retreating, you're claiming a deeper kind of joy, one that blooms in stillness. Number 3, fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. Life has a way of teaching us hard truths, doesn't it? Like the sting of a friend who fades when you need them most, or the slow unraveling of a bond you thought was unbreakable. By 70, you've likely felt it. The ache of a call that never comes. The realization that some friendships were more about convenience than care. And here's the beauty of this stage. You don't have to carry that weight anymore. Fewer friendships don't just mean fewer obligations. They mean fewer chances for disappointment to creep in. Every relationship, no matter how strong, comes with a silent contract. Check in, show up, be there. But when those promises falter, when the effort tilts one way or the phone stays silent, the letdown cuts deep. Why invite that into your life when you've already earned the right to peace? Take William, a sturdy 78-year-old with a gravelly voice and a lifetime of stories etched into his weathered hands. He'd watched friendships ebb and flow, some drifting naturally, others fading when he stopped being the one to reach out. There were decades-long pals who grew too busy, too distant, too wrapped up in their own worlds to notice he was still there. At first, it hurt. He'd replay conversations, wondering where he'd misstepped. But then, sitting on his back deck one evening, the crickets chirping a steady lullaby, he saw it clearly. He hadn't changed. They had. And he didn't need to chase them anymore. William let go of the ones who'd let him down. He stopped waiting for calls that wouldn't come, stopped pouring energy into ties that didn't hold. The result? A life less cluttered with frustration, a heart less heavy with unmet hopes. This isn't about shutting everyone out. It's about choosing who's worth your time. At this age, you can prioritize the handful of souls who lift you up, family, a steadfast friend, or even yourself, over a roster of acquaintances who drain you. So if a friendship has ever left you feeling more empty than full, know this: it's okay to walk away. You don't need a long list of names to feel whole. You just need the ones who stay. Number 4, your time becomes more precious. Time is a thief, isn't it? In your youth, it stretched out endlessly before you, hours to burn with friends, nights to lose in laughter, days to fritter away on idle chatter. It felt infinite, a resource you could spend without counting the cost. But by 70, the lens shifts. Each sunrise feels a little more fleeting. Each sunset, a gentle nudge to savor what's left. You begin to see time for what it truly is, your most precious currency. And when that truth settles in, you naturally grow choosier about where it goes. Why spend it on friendships that feel like chores when you could invest it in moments that light you up? Friendships, even the good ones, demand a slice of your day, calls to make, plans to keep, energy to give. Some are worth every second, but others linger out of habit, relics of a past self you've outgrown. At this stage, you've earned the right to ask, does this add to my joy, or is it just another box to check? Picture Richard, a lanky 82-year-old with a mop of white hair and a penchant for history books. His younger years were a whirlwind of social bustle, dinner parties where wine flowed and voices overlapped, group outings to the coast, long phone calls that meandered into the night. It was lively, electric, the kind of life that felt full. But as the decades piled on, the spark dimmed. The gatherings grew tiresome, the small talk grating. One grey afternoon, stuck at a lunch where the conversations circled complaints about the weather and aches, he felt it. This wasn't how he wanted to spend his days. So Richard rewrote the script. He stopped nodding yes, out of reflex, and started saying no with purpose. Instead of enduring another round of gossip, he'd sit by his window with a cup of coffee, watching the world wake up. He'd wander the library, fingers tracing spines of books he'd always meant to read, or take slow walks along the river, the water's rhythm syncing with his thoughts. The surprising part, he didn't miss the noise. He felt fuller, richer, because his time was his own, spent on what fueled him, not what drained him. That's the power of this age. You don't owe your hours to anyone. You've earned the freedom to guard them fiercely, to pour them into passions, peace, or simply the quiet joy of being. So if a friendship ever feels like a to-do list item, pause. Ask yourself, is this the best use of my time? Because at 70, every moment is yours to claim. Number 5, true companionship comes from within. What if the greatest friend you'll ever have is the one staring back in the mirror. We spend our lives chasing connection, told that happiness lies in a bustling social circle, that solitude is a void to fear. But by 70, after decades of learning who you are through every stumble and soar, a quiet truth emerges. You are enough. The companionship you've sought outside yourself was there all along, waiting in the steady beat of your own heart. This isn't about cutting ties. It's about building the deepest one of all, with the person who knows you best. You. Take Eleanor, a 76-year-old with warm eyes and a soft voice that still carries the lilt of her youth. For years, she equated fullness with activity, plans with friends, brunches buzzing with chatter, evenings filled with the hum of company. She thrived on it, or so she thought, until the weight of it crept in. The constant doing left her hollow, adjusting herself to fit the room. Laughing when she didn't feel it, nodding through stories she'd heard a dozen times. One rainy afternoon, tired of the cycle, she stopped. She cancelled a lunch she'd dreaded, brewed a pot of tea, and sat with herself. No agenda, no noise. She took a walk alone, rain tapping her umbrella, and noticed the world anew, the way puddles reflected the sky, the scent of wet earth. She lingered in a cafe with a novel, savoring each word without rushing to fill the silence. That day stretched into weeks, then months. Eleanor began treating herself like a cherished friend, listening to her own thoughts, indulging her curiosities, reflecting on a life rich with lessons. She painted again, colors blooming under her brush, and journaled memories that made her smile. The peace she found wasn't lonely. It was alive, vibrant, hers. And here's the magic. When you befriend yourself, you don't need others to fill your days. You become your own source of joy, your own steady anchor. The right people, those rare souls who add without taking, find you naturally, drawn to the ease you carry. So if you've ever feared letting go of friendships would leave you adrift, remember this: the truest companionship is already within you, waiting to be embraced. Number 6, letting go opens the door to a more fulfilling life. What would it feel like to shed a weight you didn't know you were carrying? To step into a life unburdened by expectations, where every choice is yours alone. At 70, letting go isn't a loss, it's a liberation. Letting go of friendships that no longer spark joy, of the myth that your worth lies in your social roster, of the notion that solitude equals emptiness. When you release these chains, you don't close a door, you fling open a window to a life that's simpler, freer, and infinitely more yours. Consider James, a wiry 79-year-old with a quiet laugh and hands that still tinker with old radios. He once thought staying connected was the secret to aging well, keeping up with old buddies, showing up to gatherings, filling his days with the buzz of others. But over time, it wore thin. The talks looped on repeat. Weather, politics, the same tired tales. The effort outweighed the reward. One summer evening, as he watched the sun dip below the horizon from his backyard, he decided, no more. He stopped forcing it, stopped calling friends who rarely called back, stopped dragging himself to events that left him drained. Instead, he turned inward. He hiked trails lined with pines, the crunch of needles underfoot his only soundtrack. He tinkered in his shed, coaxing static into music. He cooked meals for one, savoring each bite without rushing. The shift was subtle but seismic. James felt lighter, as if he'd shed a coat he'd worn too long. His days weren't empty. They were full of what mattered: his health, his curiosity, his peace. Letting go didn't isolate him. It aligned him with a life he'd always wanted but never dared claim. That's the secret. Releasing what doesn't serve you creates space for what does. You wake to mornings unhurried by obligation, lose yourself in hobbies without guilt, sit with your thoughts, and find them good company. Fulfillment isn't a guest list. It's a state of being, one you craft by living true to yourself. So if you have ever clung to friendships out of habit, ask, what could I gain by letting go? The answer might just be everything. Final thoughts. As we close this journey, take a breath and let it sink in. The idea that you don't need friends after 70 isn't a call to retreat. It's an invitation to freedom. It's about shedding the shoulds and coulds of social life, choosing peace over pressure, and stepping boldly into a chapter defined by you. We've walked through 6 reasons why letting go of friendships that no longer fit can unlock more joy, more time, more you than you ever thought possible. What hit home? Was it the relief of no longer proving yourself, the allure of peace, or the power of your own company? Maybe you've already felt this shift. Saying no to a draining invite, savoring a quiet evening, noticing how full life feels when it's yours to shape. Or maybe this is the nudge you needed to put yourself first. I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below with one thing that resonated, one way you'll carry this forward. Your voice matters here. It's fuel for this conversation. If this stirred something in you, give it a like, share it with someone who gets it, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for being here. You're not alone in this. You're just learning how strong you can stand on your own. See you in the next one.